What's up? Good morning. Happy Monday. We get another incredible week to continue building the lives and the careers that we want and building better futures, because why would we not want to do that? So I'm excited. This week's video, what I'm going to be talking about is the difference between how wealthy people and not wealthy people use money. Now, this is not a video where I'm here to talk politics or government or who deserves what or anything like that. I am not here to play that game. All I'm here to share is how are the wealthy people doing it, and how do they seemingly have endless amounts of money, and how do the vast majority of people not have that. Now, also, this is not about building billion-dollar businesses or anything like that. If someone builds a billion-dollar business, they're gonna have a lot of money. So think of this as, how would someone who makes a decent amount of money, how could they build a future to seemingly have generational wealth? Because a lot of people, what they do, and I'll talk about this, is they make a lot of money and then they end up broke later on, or they don't have enough for retirement. And so the big question is okay, how do we take the money that we're making and how do we turn it into a machine that will continue to produce for us long term until we die? And then we still have this, pile of generational wealth to pass on to later generations. So it's going to be an awesome video. I hope you go like, wow, that makes perfect sense. And the three main parts that we're going to talk about is knowing your percentages. And I'll describe what that means. But then once you know the percentages, then it's investing in growing the total dollar amount, or the top line. And then the third part is living off returns, not the principal. And so I'll actually talk through all three of those points, give examples, so that by the end of this, you can immediately go, that makes sense. So let's get to it. All right, so for this first part, we're gonna break down knowing your percentages, and I'm gonna describe what that means. So let's say that you are someone making $100,000 W-2. So let's say you work for an employer, you work for someone, and they're paying you money annually. Let's just say it's a base, it's a salary, it's not commission driven or anything like that. It's just 100K is coming in. And let's say that you know that you're gonna pay taxes on it, and let's just assume for this example, taxes are 25%. I know that that's gonna change all the time in the future, in the past, whatever. So let's just say that you're taking home $75,000. So this is what wealthy people do. So these are, W for wealthy, and let's just call these people the not wealthy, the N, no wealth. So the main difference between how these people allocate this money is massively different. And I'm going to walk you through step by step, but think of your friends, your family, extended or colleagues. It's when someone talks about budgeting, most people are like, oh God, like kill me now. I hate budgeting. Like this, but this is not necessarily budgeting. It's strategy. You would never have someone run a company or run a business or even run a team without having a strategy. You got to have a strategy if you want to grow and develop and improve the future, whether it's for yourself or for your business or for your team or for your family. And so the very first thing that the wealthy people do is they have a strategy for how they're actually going to be using their capital. And that's how you want to think about this, is don't think of this as income that I can come home and use for living and spending. That's it. It's not. Think of this as this is your total capital that you have for both enjoying, living, and building the future. You need to have construction capital. And construction capital is capital that you use to improve and grow into the future. So the 75,000, what they do is they set percentages and allocate strategically across these different parts of their lives. And so the very first thing is they set a percentage for savings. And it doesn't mean that you save everything. Like for example, like the rule of thumb is 6 to 12 months. 6 to 12 months of whatever your cost of living is, whatever it costs for you to actually survive, to eat, pay rent, insurance, medical, anything that you need to like literally live. But once you hit that 6 to 12 months, you don't want to keep cash in there because that cash is not doing anything for you. It's not working for you. Once you know that you have the 6 to 12 month security cushion, over and over saving is not going to benefit you because you're actually losing returns on that. It's just being eaten by inflation. Now, maybe you put it in something like Ally Bank or Marcus Marcus by Goldman Sachs, and you're making like 1% on it, but that's still not even beating inflation. So you don't want to overfund the savings because it's the money's just getting eroded. But you want that principle there to be able to protect. I mean, for example, like when COVID happened, people lost jobs and all of a sudden they didn't have a rainy day fund. So think of this as not necessarily a rainy day fund. It's risk mitigation. If you have 6 to 12 months, you can make decisions that other people can't because you know that you're good for 6 to 12 months. So most wealthy people have this risk mitigation fund if anything crazy happens or if they need to make a strategic decision in their life. So then what they do is they allocate a percentage to paying down any high APR or any high credit. Most people, if you look at the average amount of credit card debt that people have, it is insane. I don't know who you are watching this, but if you have credit card debt, you do not want that sitting on there. One, it destroys your credit rating if you miss a payment or anything like that. But then two is you're paying anywhere from like 15 to 25% on that borrowed money. And that is like there's really very other few methods of borrowing money that are as expensive as that. So you absolutely do not want money sitting on your credit cards. Pay it off. You do not want money sitting on the credit cards if you're paying that interest. So the very first thing before anything else is pay down the credit cards. Get rid of it. You do not want credit card debt. Then after that, and these people, the wealthy people, they don't maintain credit card debt. What they do is they use the credit cards to get the benefits, the 2% cash back, the 5% cash back, the travel points, whatever, and they always pay it off fully at the end of the month. So they get all the travel benefits, all the bonus points, but they never, ever, ever pay interest to the credit card companies. All the benefits without any of the expense. It's wonderful. So once you do that, then what they do is personal development, and we'll talk about that. But this is on the second part of this video where it's growing the top line, growing the total dollar amounts. But then what they do is they invest. Now notice that investing, whatever percent that is, investing comes before spending. Investing comes before spending. Say it with me. Investing comes before spending. So I before S. And that is the single biggest difference between the wealthy and the not wealthy. The wealthy people invest their money before they spend. The not wealthy people spend before they invest. That's even assuming they do invest anything. If there's anything left over to invest. Usually it's just change. It's crumbs. It's like 2% of their money. So they invest before they spend. And there's two different types of investments. There's growth or high risk investments, and then there's security investments. Or think of it as retirement planning. That money is, you're not going to touch that for like 30, 40 years or 20 years or however long, and you want that money to be there and compound consistently and predictably over the long term. So you're not looking for the Hail Mary here. This is all right, let's just keep growing this at 8 to 10%. Long term, 20, 30 years, and I know it'll be there. It's doing its work for me. So there's investing percentages. And then there's a percentage for paying down lower APRs. So something like a student loan is a very low APR. So that could be anywhere from, call it 2 to 6%, 2 to 8%. Or maybe you have a mortgage or a car loan or something like that where you're paying between nowadays, 2 to 3% for a mortgage. But anywhere usually, again, it's between like 2 to 6 or 2 to 8%, much lower than credit cards. So then you pay that down. Only after you've saved, you've paid down your debts, and you've invested in yourself, but also investing in growth assets, only then are they spending. And there's X allocated to the cost of living. And cost of living, again, think of that as just surviving. It's not the standard or the lifestyle that you desire. Think of cost of living as your food, rent, medical, insurance, like anything you need to just sustain your life. And then there's discretionary or personal. And I guess that this is based on lifestyle preferences. So lifestyle. Because your cost of living could be very different than someone else's. But at the same time, it's also, there are some people living incredibly lavish lifestyles, who have not done what they need to do on the top part. So realistically, they're still falling into this bucket, even though they're, quote, supporting their cost of living. And then at the very, very bottom is discretionary and personal. So these people are taking care of all of the other areas of their life that they need to with their money before they spend it on fun, luxury, vacation, lavish lifestyles, anything like that. Now, so savings, maybe you have like a 5% savings rate for your APR. Maybe that's 10%. Maybe if you have credit card, you want to plow that thing down. You do not want credit card debt. And then personal development, maybe that's like 2% a year for books or courses or whatever. And then investing, maybe that's 20% a year. So that's what, 30, 35, 37. So let's say this is maybe, again, another, let's say 10%. So that's 40, 47. And then your cost of living, maybe that's 30. So that's 77. And then that leaves you, what, 23? 23%? 15, 17, 37, 47, 77, 97, 100. Cool. So that leaves you 23% discretionary or personal. Now, that is how a wealthy person manages their money, is they know their percentages, and the important thing is they never break percentages. They do not change these percentages. And everybody's percentages could be totally different. You could change yours from 5 to 10%. Your APR, if you don't have any credit debt, well, maybe that's 0%, and then your investing goes to 30 or 40%. So what these look like for every, quote, wealthy person is very, very different. But most of them know their strategy. And then you have someone who's not wealthy. They spend before they invest. So if they're taking home the $75,000, the very first thing that they're worried about is their cost of living. Well, they buy a more lavish apartment or they buy a bigger house, and they'll literally spend anywhere from like 50 to 60% of, and I know this sounds insane, but like that's what a lot of people do. They literally spend 50 to 60% of their income on their cost of living. And then their discretionary, they then take the additional or the remaining 20 to call it 40% on discretionary. And then all this other stuff becomes meh. Maybe. We'll see about it. So, is there one right or wrong way? No. Who am I to judge how people live their life? Who are all of us to judge how people live their life? But the most important thing is, if we do want wealth, if we want this to build and grow and to be able to have better lifestyles in the future, not only for ourselves, but for our families, this is the game. This is how people win the game of wealth. And so now what I want to talk about is, okay, well, if this is fixed to 75K, all right, well, that's not, a superb lifestyle. I mean, how do we do more than that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in the second section right now. All right, so now let's talk about the second part. Invest in growing the total dollar amount, or this top line, this total income number. So what the not wealthy people do is when they earn a certain amount of money, they take that money and immediately spend it. They spend that money. So the next year, in their job, in their career, in their investments, and whatever is, they're still only making $100,000. So they continue living this cycle. But the thing is that their 100K is leading to their lifestyle, which is then dependent on the 100K. And so they're stuck in this loop of, and these people aren't necessarily living paycheck to paycheck. Maybe they do have a little bit of savings or a little bit in retirement. But the thing is they're never going to escape this loop. And what we'll talk about in the third part is the main difference is, why do some people have generational wealth longer term and other people end up broke at the end of their lives or living off a principle? We'll talk about that. But the important thing is this cycle is very, very limited. It's not a compounding growth cycle. Why? Because there's no investment in consistent growth. There's no compounding growth as a part of that equation. And so when you look at the people who are wealthy, they're playing a very different game. And what gets exciting is it's unlimited. There's an unlimited nature in playing this game, because how you grow this top line number, there's a million different ways. There are people making literally money in every part of the economy, every industry, every type of position or thing. Like, there's artists that are millionaires. There are billionaires. I mean, there's people in sports. There's people in politics. There's people in business. There's people in technology, healthcare, like whatever. There's so many ways to make money. But the important thing is that the people who are consistently making more are doing things differently. Is what they're doing is they're taking a percentage of this take-home pay and they're thinking of it as it's construction capital. I'm going to use that money to get better, reinvest in myself in order to make more money next year. And so if we were to take kind of that loop and say, all right, they made 100K this year, they then increase their value. They're investing in personal development right here. So their skills, their knowledge, their experiences, their ability to add more value to their team, to the company, to the marketplace, or maybe they start a side hustle and they start building their own business, or maybe they start investing in other people and they're growing the business and now they're generating more income passively from them. There's a million different ways to increase this top line, but the important part is they are investing. They are growing themselves or some other cash generating asset that is improving the return. And so once they have this, their lifestyle stays the same. It stays the same. Or I'm sorry, better, sorry, not the lifestyle. Not the lifestyle. Take that back. It's the percentages. The percentages stay the same. They don't change their percentages. And then that money goes back in, but the next year it's not 100. Maybe next year it's 115. Maybe they literally improved themselves, gotten certain certifications, or they outperformed so massively at work, they took on new projects, and then they went in and negotiated a 15% raise that year rather than a standard 4 to 5%. And so that next year they're making 115. Well, again, they're taking 115, and if it's 2% that they're allocated, they're not changing the percentages. So that percentage, so if they were to take that money and then again put it into more personal development, and then everything else, they don't change any of their other percentages, well then that money might turn into let's call it 130 the next year, or 125. Like whatever this dollar amount is, it's increasing. And that's the important point, is these people are making their money, they have this strategy, but they're consistently developing themselves so that the next year, this continues going up. Well, as this continues going up, so do their growth investments. And this is, if you were to look at the difference between the wealthy side and the not wealthy side, these are all expenditures. There's nothing producing or growing revenue. There's nothing that's bringing more value to the marketplace here or returning cash. And so when you look at this side, there's 3 different areas that are producing more income. Personal development is income producing. A growth investment is income producing. And then you have the security investment, which is for retirement, which is income producing. And that's probably going to be consistently reinvested, whatever the dividends are, the coupon payments for bonds, like those things are being reinvested and compounded over 20, 30, 40 years. So they have 3 different ways to consistently increase their income. The people on this side are not increasing the top line. They're not increasing the total dollar amount. So if this were to be, let's say $200,000 now, because they've consistently improved this, well, that's $200,000. If they still have 30% set, not changed, they never changed the percentages. That 30%, their cost of living, they've now improved the quality of their living by 2 times. Notice, to improve their quality of living, they did not jeopardize their savings or their investments. They kept everything the same. And so these people that are exceptionally wealthy, what they've done is they never took the money. They always prioritized investing before spending. And as they invested, they increased this top line number, which means that they increase their take-home pay. Just to make this easy, let's just double it. So, and I know that's not perfect, but like just to make numbers easy, let's say 150K. Well, they've now doubled that, which means that they've doubled their allocation, the total dollar amount going into all these different percentages. All right, so now for this third part, I'm going to walk you through a super, super important difference between having consistent wealth long term, like forever, quote, forever going forward, or running out of money. Now, if you're somewhere in your millennials or maybe your middle age or anything like that, you've probably heard of a lot of the older generations or the baby boomers or other people who are in quote retirement that are worried about running out of money. Well, I'm going to show you exactly why people run out of money. And the problem is that with the advancements in technology, with the advancements in healthcare, I mean, if you're, in your 20s or 30s or even 40s or 50, I mean, the speed at which healthcare and technology is advancing is incredible. They're able to 3D print organs out of stem cells, and then we have the CRISPR technology. So we have all this healthcare advancement, which means that we're going to be living a lot longer. Let's go. But that's a good thing. But it also means we need to be able to afford that. We need to be able to live long term, and the government is not going to be able to sustain everybody living long term. That's a whole nother discussion. But that means that we have a deep responsibility for managing our finances to make sure that if we're going to live to be 90, 100, 110, 120, and I know that sounds insane now, but 30 to 40 years from now, who knows? Maybe 100 is now the average lifespan, or 110. And so a lot of people aren't thinking long term enough when they think about their finances, especially people in their 20s and 30s. We're gonna be around a while, man. This is a good thing. But it means that we gotta have the money. So live off the returns, not the principal. Now, what does that mean? The principal means if you make 100 grand, living off the principal means that you're taking that 100 grand and spending it. You're not making any return. You're not investing it and making more money on top of it. Now, the wealthy people live off returns. The not wealthy people, or the people who run out of money, are the people who are living on principle. And what we don't want to do is we do not want to live forever on principle. Now, if you know that you have 10 years to live or something, and you're like, yo, I'm trying to ball out, trying to make the most of my money, absolutely. All right, start spending down some principle. But if you want to have generational wealth, and if you want to make sure that you are never feeling this sense of I'm losing, the money's going to run out, that means that we need to have a base dollar amount that is large enough to generate the return on investment that we need to cover our cost of living. And when you hit that point where your investments are generating enough money annually to cover your cost of living, that is, quote, financial freedom. That's financial independence. That now means that no matter what, those investments, depending on the investments, again, not all investments are certain. But if you have investments that are going to be, and the example I'm giving here is, let's say that you have a cost of living. Let's say that your cost of living after tax is $60,000. That's if you still have a mortgage, or who knows, maybe your mortgage is paid off. But let's just assume it's mortgage, it's rent, it's food, basic, healthcare, anything like that. And then also going out to dinner, maybe 3-4 times a month, or maybe a vacation, like whatever. Your lifestyle is 60 grand. Well, if you have $1 million saved, now a lot of people go, oh my God, that person's a millionaire. They're set forever. No, literally $1 million is not a lot of money anymore. And especially with inflation, especially with all this printing of more capital, this $1 million is in our lifetimes. I mean, if you're in your 20s, 30s, 40s, like, this money is going to have to go a long way. And so $1 million is not a lot of money anymore. Now, what that means is this $1 million, if we're invested, if we have that money invested and it's generating an 8% return, well, those returns are they're not taxed at normal, ordinary income levels, assuming it's a long-term investment. Now, I'm not going to get into that, but let's just assume that it's at the capital gains taxes, which are much lower. Well, that means that you're probably going to be paying about 15% taxes on this 8%. So that means that if you're making 8%, you're taxed 15% of that, your net return is going to be 6.8%. Well, 6.8% of $1 million is $68,000 after tax per year. Well, that means that as long as this $1 million stays invested, it's going to consistently generate $68,000 going forward. It doesn't run out. It just keeps producing. And what's important is if this $60,000, if that's your cost of living, well, that means you still have $6,000, let's say plus 6K reinvested every year. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could, or I'm sorry, 8,000. You'd still have that 8,000 to reinvest in the million. And actually, it would grow. It would compound over time. It would continue growing because you're adding more to the top. So that 68,000 is about 5,700 per month, assuming that you don't reinvest the 8,000. But anyways, so then you have the people who are they start running out of money. Why? Well, it's because they have that million and they're using this cost of their $60,000 cost of living. They're spending the base. Maybe they have this $1 million in a savings account, or maybe they have it in a checking account, or they have it somewhere, or I mean, maybe it is an investment account and they're actually just pulling it out. Well, that means that they're using that 60,000 and taking it out of the million, which means that after year one, they now have $940,000 left. Well, then they pull out another $60,000 in year two. Well, that means they only have $880,000 left. Well, that's only going to last them about 17 years until eventually they start running out of principal. Well, at that point, a lot of people depend on the government. They depend on Medicare, Medicaid, or welfare, or Social Security, or all these other food stamps, like all these other incentive programs for people who literally run out of money. And it's a sad thing, but if you've seen in the grocery stores, sometimes there are people in their 70s, 80s. I mean, people that they're bagging groceries, and it's one, they don't have the physical body to be able to do labor that pays more, and they've probably retired, and they've already been retired for maybe 10 or 20 or sometimes longer years. So they've been out of the workforce for that long, which means that when they run out of money, they're no longer skilled laborers. I mean, or skilled workers. Like they don't know the technology. They haven't been in the workforce. They haven't advanced at the same rate as the marketplace. So when they go back to get a job in whatever it is that they were doing before, they don't have the technical skills anymore because the world is advanced. Technology is advanced. The systems, the processes, the marketplace, the companies, everything have advanced. And now they're competing with people coming out of college that are lower paying. They're fresh, they're hungry, they're just looking for experience. They don't care what they're paid, and they have up-to-date skill sets. So this is a huge problem that a lot of people don't even face until they eventually hit the point where they've run out of money. But even more importantly is very few people are having the foresight to realize, oh my God, like this could happen to me or my family or my parents or my siblings or my kids. This is a huge problem. And the only way to not allow this to happen is to understand that I need to have a large enough base. And to build this base, that goes all the way back to the beginning of this video where I talked about you invest before you spend. If you're consistently investing before you spend, you will build this base. It might take you 10, 20, 30, 40 years. It might take you a long time to build the base. But once you have that base, if you invest it properly, you're going to be consistently generating annual returns that will give you a secured or a predictable stream of income longer term. And it's financial independence because you're producing it, your assets are producing that, and you're not dependent on anybody. You're not dependent on family, friends, the government, anybody. All right, so now what I want to show you as a very, very final part of this video is I want to show you how to reverse engineer backwards into a cost of living that you want, a desired lifestyle, so that you know, all right, how much base do I need in order to produce that consistently year after year? So now let's say that your cost of living, rather than $60,000, let's say that you desire a lifestyle of $120,000 a year, $120K. So if you want a lifestyle consistently, year after year, predictably, until you die, forever and ever, and then you're going to have generational wealth to pass on to your kids or your family, whatever. Well, if you want that, this number has to go up. But the question is okay, well, by how much? And that's where we can reverse engineer it. So you figure that, all right, I want $120,000 a year after tax. Well, then you take that $120,000 and we can again use, and this is Also, the returns, these are just examples. Every investment, every type of investment, every investment strategy has different return profiles. So this is just an example here. The numbers are not perfect. So 120,000 using the same example of 6.8% after tax. Well, in order to figure out what that is, we need to divide into the 120,000. We divide the 6.8% into it. So 120,000 divided by 6.8% equals the 1.7 million. But this is the after-tax dollars. This is after tax. So post-tax. We need to figure out the total amount, the base pre-tax. We need the pre-tax base. So then what you have to do is take that 1.7 million and divide it by 1 minus the tax rate, or 0.85. Well, then that gets us to 2.1 million. Now, these numbers seem really high, and a lot of people don't realize how much money it takes in order to consistently generate and achieve financial freedom for a specific or a desired lifestyle. So what I challenge you to do is really think about, what is the lifestyle that I want long term? It's not about today. It's about 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now, 40, 50, 60 years from now, however old you are. It's thinking through, what is the desired lifestyle that I want for me and my family at that point in time. And then you're going to have to reverse engineer backwards to figure out, what base number do you need to have in terms of investments in order to make that happen. And I might be touching on that in terms of, okay, well, how do we build this base? If anything, I'll touch on that in a different video, but the point of this video was that you could instantly see the difference between how wealthy and not wealthy people manage their money in terms of, one, what are they doing with their annual income? Do they have percentages? Do they have a strategy? Because the wealthy people do, the not wealthy people don't. The other final most important point is, wealthy people invest before they spend. They invest before they spend. Not wealthy people spend before they invest. And then the other part is, with the investment capital that they have been accruing and building over time and compounding their investments over time, the wealthy people then, after they retire or after they decide that they don't want to work anymore, they don't have the consistent active income coming in anymore, well, then they've built this base and they're living off of the returns. They're living off the returns, not the principal. So I hope you found this super helpful. If you did, please share it with everybody you know, because more people need to know this stuff. And especially if you're young, a lot of us are thinking that we're going to be dying in 70, 80, 90. Man, I really think we are going to be living a long time with where technology and healthcare and all these other advancements are going. So we are going to have to be able to afford to live a very long time. So happy Monday. Have an outstanding week, and never stop building a better future for you, your family, your friends, the community, everybody. Let's go get it.